What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the KFC Opticlones with the FansToys spotter, both versions of a Masterpiece Reflector. So both of these figures are actually quite old. So the FansToys figure came out in 2015 and the KFC figure came out in 2015 as well, but they reissued it again recently in 2019 and then again in 2021. So this is actually a reissue. This was sent to me by Mr. Michael Rogers. Thank you for allowing me to take a look at this. I've been wanting to do this versus, but I haven't owned these KFC Opticlones. So thank you, Michael Rogers. As I always mention with these comparisons, I try to be as objective as possible, but of course there's subjectivity involved when you're doing a comparison like this. So if I pick one or the other for a category and you prefer the other one, then you win. I really try to do these comparisons, try to help people make a decision what direction they want to go with their collection and with their action figures. So without further ado, let's get into the comparison and we'll start off with accessories. So there are all the accessories you get with these two sets of figures, and obviously very similar, but we're going to go through each one, just compare them. So first off, you get a smaller model of the camera, which can be used by any Masterpiece figure, Megatron, whatever. Those both look nice. Next, we get the lens here. So the FansToys one has a green tint, whereas this one's just clear. And they both convert into weapons. I don't know. The FansToys one kind of comes apart like this, and then these two fold up. And then you can use the pieces from the Flash to make these into guns. Same for this one. These come apart into 3 pieces. You take these legs off of the tripod here, and then that can make guns for the KFC. So really the same. Now this one I actually have trouble getting apart, but this makes a third weapon, which is kind of has a sight and everything. So we'll call those even. They both turn into weapons. This stand, although it is an extra gimmick, we'll talk about it in a minute when we get to gimmicks, but because it has this extra stand, these really just become the handles for the guns. So we'll set that aside. They both come with a flash. Now they do come apart and do certain things, like the KFC one turns into a missile launcher, and you can actually put this onto the stand. So if you want to have kind of like a battle station for these guys, you can do that. This one comes apart. It does have 3 knives inside, and the knives do mount onto the side. So you actually take this apart like this. Let's see if I can remember. Take this off, then take these apart. And then there's handles here to hold these as guns. This is where you mount these parts right here. But then you get these little knives. And so these can actually attach to the sides of their legs, which is kind of a cool little accessory. You can get it right there, and then they can kind of sheath it. So you do get a little bit extra here with these, but I'm going to call it even since this one kind of turns into a missile launcher on this mount here. So we'll give them even. And what you're left with is what you see here. So we have the winder for the film here. Little, I don't know what you call this, but the little button to wind up the film. And then FansToys, you get 3 Energon cubes, 3 additional guns. If you don't like those guns from the lens, you can use these, which are more like cartoon accurate guns. And then you get 3 faces per bot. Well, I guess 2 additional, right? 1 on them and then 2 additional. They all have the same, so it's kind of silly. I don't know why they gave you so many, because the sets are the same. So either way, FansToys is going to win easily on accessories. They have way more stuff and just does a lot more. All right, next we're going to talk about the gimmicks that these 2 sets come with. And I already mentioned the KFC comes with this stand and missile launcher. It does seem a little bit low for them to use, but you can do that. Whereas the FansToys has this that turns into 5 different weapons. It's the 3 knives plus the 2 little flash guns that this turns into. But setting those aside, KFC actually has some more gimmicks. So if you open up the backpack here, and if you watched my community page and you saw I did try to get this apart and get batteries in here, but I'll just show you how to do that. So there's 4 screws here. You can take that off. You can see there's a switch right here, and that switch will turn on a light inside of here. It is very, very difficult to get this apart and back together because all of these joints and things start falling apart on you. And then on top of that, that battery is very unique. I think it was an AG0, so I didn't have that available. But if you get that battery in there, you can get this to light up. So that's a cool little gimmick there. You also get another gimmick, which I was able to make work. So let's close that up there. Now this spot, which is the, I guess the button spot, in his backpack, if you open this up, you fold this down, fold this out, there's a little button here. So this turns into the button on the camera. You press it, and it takes that camera, picture taking sound. And that's kind of a cool little gimmick. They don't have that on the FansToys. In fact, there are no lights or sounds at all on the FansToys. So we're going to give Gimmicks over to KFC. They just put in some really cool little features that add to the playability. All right, next we'll talk about the cartoon accuracy. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there so you can take a look for yourself. Now let's bring in the bots a little bit closer so you can take a look. They both have a good likeness to the original Reflector. FansToys went with more of a squared off look, kind of for everything. Everything is squared off and more rectangular, even the head and the face. Whereas KFC went with a more rounded look for the head, the face, the shoulders, the body. I mean, everything's kind of more rounded. Now, for me personally, it does feel like FansToys hit that cartoon a little bit better in terms of that squareness. That is kind of how I picture the Reflector figures, but it might have gone too far in some places. But either way, they also kind of picked this neon green, whereas the FansToys went with this forest green. The forest green is a little bit closer, although maybe a little bit dark, but I do think that color is a little bit closer. Then we come to the center bots here. These two definitely have some differences. So the pylons on the KFC are much taller and actually a little too big. They kind of eclipse his face a little bit, whereas these are kind of the right size compared to the cartoon image. And then same for this center, the green lens, although looks nice, is not accurate to the cartoon. This is more accurate with the gunmetal outside and the silver on the inside. Same for the faces here. These are more squared off, where these are more rounded. One thing that I did notice that is kind of better on the KFC, even though I think that FansToys hit the cartoon a little bit better, is the size. So KFC is a little bit taller. Obviously, you've noticed that throughout this review. And they should come up to, according to the Somewhat chart, right up to this yellow bar on Megatron's chest. FansToys come up to basically the bottom of this waistline here. So they seem a little bit on the short side, whereas KFC looks like it's just about the right height. But other than that, I think FansToys did a better job on the cartoon accuracy. So we're going to give it over to FansToys. Next, we'll talk about the sculpt on these two figures. And again, they both did a good job, but they definitely took some differences in how they approach the figures. From the front, they both look pretty clean. They have sculpted detail on the arms and legs. Come to the side, you can see the KFC backpack is pretty large and kind of takes over the look of the figure. And then you come to the back and you've really got some break up here because you got the gray panels here, gray here. FansToys was able to hide that away, and they have a relatively small backpack on the back. The same is true for the center bots. You got relatively large and sort of ugly backpack on the KFC, whereas the FansToys is pretty clean. There's not a lot sticking out back here, and it goes pretty flush. So we're going to give Sculpt over to FansToys. I think they just did a better job cleaning up and overall just compacting that backpack. Next, we'll talk about the paint on these two figures. Now, normally, FansToys cleans up on this category, but this is one of their only figures that is not fully painted. So starting with KFC, you've got painted face, painted chest with the bezel here, the red stripes on the arms, the purple paint here on the shins with the red and white stripe, and then you've got the painted die-cast feet, which is this metallic purple. On the FansToys, you've got the painted face, painted chest with the bezel, you've got the painted shins with the silver and red stripe. The feet are not painted. They are die-cast underneath here, but this is actually a plastic here. So just by a hair, I'm going to give paint over to KFC, just a slightly more paint, and it looks good. It's good looking paint. All right, next we'll talk about the build quality on these two figures. Now, this is interesting because I've never actually handled these KFC until now. And you saw earlier, these are kind of wobbly, and it's the design of these heels. So you kind of have to put these down, but unfortunately, they're on pins, the way they did these feet. So you can try to get this in, but it just pushes up. And so you're constantly trying to balance him. Now you've seen them standing here, but that's because I took a while to get them to stand straight. And it's just kind of annoying because you're constantly messing with that. These heels don't really stay either. And then you've got this additional joint, and those are on screws. I have tightened those screws, but it still feels a little bit loose. So that kind of really takes it from the play value. This also is very annoying. The backpack is constantly coming out as you're messing with it. It doesn't really peg into place or like lock into place. It just sort of sticks in on the top there. So those build issues really keep me from enjoying KFC. On the FansToys, everything is tight and feels good and solid. Nothing moves on this thing. It just feels really, really good overall. I don't have any loose parts. You plant him and he's fine. He's got nice flat feet there. Very little die cast. Both of them, the only die cast is in the feet. So that's not really a difference, but just the fact that it stands and it's more stable and the backpack locks in makes the FansToys feel like a better build quality. So I'm going to give build quality over to FansToys. Now let's talk about the articulation on these figures. In order to do that, we'll go through each one individually so you can see how they articulate. So the KFC, the head is on a hinge and it's on a rotating swivel. So this goes up and down as well as side to side. No side to side, but it rotates side to side. And then you can use that panel to get it a little bit further up if you want. No down. The down is just on the rotating swivel. Rotation at the shoulder goes up to there. You got a little piece there. You get a little bit, a tiny bit extra rotation here on the shoulder, but not too much. Rotation at the bicep. Sadly, a double jointed elbow. So there are two pins, but because of the sculpt, you can't use it. So you can either get it to there, or you can get 90 degrees, basically barely past 90 degrees at all. Rotation at the wrist, single pinned hands, which are typical for smaller bots like this. Rotation at the waist on a ratchet. Basically just 2 clicks, I guess. 1, 2, yeah. Legs goes up to there, hindered by this hip skirt here, back to there, also hindered by the backpack. Out to the side on a soft ratchet. Squeaky. Rotation at the thigh, which is also soft ratchet. I've never really seen something like that. You have, again, a double jointed knee here and here, but due to the sculpt, you can't use it. You can't even get 90 degrees out of that knee. Rotation at the ankle, and you also get a toe tilt and a heel tilt. But unfortunately, due to the way this is designed, like I mentioned during the build quality, it's very annoying to try to pose those ankles. But you do get articulation out of the toes and heels. All right, moving on to FansToys. The head is on a ball joint, so it gets up to there, down to there. You do get the side-to-side movement, and it rotates all the way around. Shoulders rotate all the way around. Oh, I forgot if I mentioned that over there. Goes up to there, you have a little piece down there. You don't get that little extra on the shoulder, but you do get the fully usable double jointed elbow, so you can get it all the way up to there. Rotation at the wrist, single pin for the hands. Rotation at the waist goes all the way around, so no hindrance there. You have hip skirts here. This outer one is a little bit tight. Goes up to there, back to there, hindered by that. Out to the side. You can get these up a little bit higher. Rotation at the thigh. Double jointed knee they can actually use. You can actually get even further if you use that joint too. So you can get another bend out of that leg. You have a rotation of the thigh I mentioned. You have ankle tilt out to there. You do have an ankle pivot, but it's back here. And then you have a toe tilt here. So because FansToys, actually you can use the double jointed elbows and the double jointed knees that they gave you, I'm going to give articulation over to FansToys. Next we'll talk about the transformation and engineering. And this is kind of interesting because FansToys, while it's cleaner and while I think the engineering is superior due to the cleanliness and the way they were able to compact everything, that also makes the transformation not as fun. Whereas the KFC transformation is not too bad. I mean, there are some panels and parts here that you have to kind of open up. But it does seem a little bit more simple just because of the way they've designed it. FansToys has a lot of little tight tolerances and tight parts, especially down here, that are somewhat irritating. It's also, the sequence is a little bit harder to remember. So I'm going to give transformation over to KFC, whereas I'm going to give design and engineering over to FT, just due to the way they're able to clean it up so well. So here they both are in their alt modes, and both pretty good looking cameras. Now I have to apologize because I need to take a point back away from KFC for transformation. I had remembered this FansToys transformation for being frustrating, especially with the tolerances on these bottom pieces and then the tolerances up here getting this piece together. And it is still a frustrating transformation up here. But then I did this, and oh my gosh, this has so many little panels that are frustrating. These things down here, they don't stay. Getting these tabbed in right here is a really frustrating part. Back here, and they still don't really stay together. Unfortunately, kind of likes to come apart. But these panels back here and up here, getting these legs down. I actually don't even have this one all the way down because it won't go. All of that just adds to the frustration of transforming this, and not something I would ever want to do again. On top of that, the camera itself is not very solid, so you can see it's kind of flexing. So if you shake it a little bit, it starts to come apart. The FansToys is a solid lump, nothing going anywhere. Really feels good. So I'm going to give transformation over to FansToys. Let's take a look at that G1 cartoon, and you'll see I think the FansToys also does a better job at recreating the cartoon, especially with this lens with the silver, the red stripe versus the black, which is totally not accurate. And then the overall shape and sculpt, having this top viewfinder here, this one's kind of small in comparison or relative to the rest of the camera. And then the two heads here on the top, which kind of stick out and become buttons, is much more accurate to the cartoon than what the setup is here. You got a button here and then kind of a hole there. Well, the hole is intended for this, to mount the flash. So you can put that there. FansToys also gives you the flash, so you can mount that on there and you have the same look. But if you don't like that, you can have that more cartoon accurate look with just the two heads. And so I think as far as cartoon accuracy, FansToys definitely nailed it a little bit better than the KFC. Now you do get some extra features, so you get this, which will mount right here on the bottom, so you can put this on a tripod. Now you can see it's starting to droop, and that's because the thing doesn't want to hold together as well. It's just sort of not as solid. So you do get that. You also get the picture taking sound when you press this button. If you don't want that, you can take this button out, and you can take this little piece here, and now you've got the film winding. So back in the day, you had to actually wind your film manually, and again, this doesn't stay all that well. But if you want this instead of the button, you can do that. Me personally, I would prefer to just leave the button. It looks more accurate, it looks better, and it doesn't pop out like this does. So because of the overall accuracy, the feel, and the quality, and just the general sculpt and shape, I'm going to give FansToys Ultimo. The final factor on these two sets is the cost. The KFC set, even the reissue, comes in at $150. The FansToys set comes in at $155, $5 difference. Now, these on the aftermarket are going for a lot, but they have never reissued them, so I don't have a retail price other than the $155. Either way, KFC is going to win on cost by $5. So final thoughts on the comparison. You can see the score there. FansToys is going to win on this one. And I'm actually not surprised. I thought this was a good figure going in, and it didn't surprise me that KFC, there are some places where it does feel a little bit cheap, especially in these feet and the ankles, and then the backpacks as well. Those do feel a little bit cheaper, but they do have some additional gimmicks like the light up feature, like the sound. Especially if you can get them to work, then those are kind of fun. So if you like those little gimmicks and accessories, then that's probably going to be the one for you, including this little missile launcher there. If you want more of a just solid feeling robot and you don't care so much about those additional features or gimmicks, then I think FansToys is the one for you. Me personally, I'm going to stick with FansToys. I really like how this set looks and feels, so that's going to stay in my collection. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.